What's up, guys, and thank you for joining us for this week's episode of This Just In. We are here, of course, TJ
And Troy.
and Troy,
Yeah, that's me.
here to tell you about all the awesome new stuff that landed on the Freakopolis Geekery shelves this week. Of course, these comics came out worldwide this week.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't know it, but like movies, like video games, comics and books and collectibles have a sort of legal street date. So you can't sell them before a specific date. And in our case, we receive our books weekly. And then on Wednesdays, you can have them on the shelf and make them available for purchase. So most of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this show are sort of the street date for them is Wednesday, October 3rd. And so here we are talking about them right the day after.
That's right, but for our Pro List members, there's plenty of books not featured on this show in the pull list box behind the shelf. So if you guys are a member of that, getting 10% off your pre-orders, swing by. Got a bunch of awesome books for you.
Yeah, we actually get in more titles for that purpose than we do for the titles that we put on the shelf. Although we have a really nice collection here.
That's right. So let's get right into it on this week's This Just In. Let's see what we've got up first. DC books this week leading the charge. I think that's been the common theme for This Just In. But we've got Batman with the conclusion of the War of Jokes and Riddles.
Yeah, the War of Jokes and Riddles, of course, involving the Joker and the Riddler, trying to sort of battle it out on which one of them can drive Batman the craziest, I think.
That's right, yeah, and we sort of see the winner here. Is it Joker? Is it Batman? Is it the Riddler? We find out in this issue, as well as get an answer to, earlier in this series, Bruce Wayne proposed to Selina Kyle, also known as Catwoman, and we find out her reaction to that, and whether she accepts his proposal or not. And it was a really touching moment, in my opinion. This book has been super fun.
And there's something sort of indicating that the War of Jokes and Riddles and its results are going to expose to Catwoman something she didn't know about Batman before. And will that in some way affect her decision?
That's right. I think it did have an impact. I read this whole series and loved it very much. We have plenty of copies of these left. Super fun sort of arc, the War of Jokes and Riddles. Up next, we have a new Superman comic. It's really cool that they put out Batman and Superman on the same week. And this one continues that Deathstroke arc that we saw started in the last issue.
Right, Deathstroke being, he's not in Superman's power league by any means. However, he's a clever assassin, and he's got a situation sort of built up around someone very close to Clark Kent and Superman in that Lois Lane, who we talked about in the last issue, in issue 31. She went off to try and get a sort of interview from inside the mind of a killer and interview Deathstroke. He took advantage of that situation to create kind of a lose-lose situation for Superman, where Superman is going to need to try and rescue Lois, but in order to rescue Lois from Deathstroke, he may have to give up on some of his own personal convictions. And the other choice would be to maintain his Superman heroic convictions, but let Lois die. And Deathstroke really seems to be enjoying having the upper hand on Superman in this case.
That's right, yeah. I mean, Deathstroke is super devious, a great plotter, and if anybody can sort of force Superman into a tough situation, it is him for sure. We also have a new issue of Harley Quinn where she is still in the running for the mayor position in New York City.
Of New York City.
Yeah.
This is not Gotham. It's not Metropolis. It's New York City. And that's, and the current mayor, of course, knows that she's trying to take his position. He's sent killers after her. He's tried to sabotage her campaign. But Harley's popular, and she has popularity with the people of New York City. So I guess we'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are sort of normal DC books this week. If you guys have any questions, I'm keeping an eye on the comment feed on the stream here, and I'd love to answer them for you. If you want us to pull something for you, let us know in the comments below. Next up, a restock of a really awesome Batman trade paperback. This is
Right. This book isn't new this week. It's just we like to show off some of these things that are available here in the shop or in your local shop wherever you happen to be.
Yeah, so this is Batman I Am Gotham. It is the first volume of the Batman Rebirth arc that includes the War of Jokes and Riddles, but this is much prior to that. It is issues 1 through 6.
1 through 6 of Rebirth, plus the original #1 Rebirth, which tells the story of how Batman relates to the Rebirth reworking of DC, and where he sort of came from in that. And it's interesting because you would think with the title Batman I Am Gotham, it's referring to Batman as saying he is Gotham, but there's actually a villain in this story with the name of Gotham.
That's right, yeah.
So it's a sort of a double meaning. Which one of them is Gotham? I guess you can find out by reading this trade paperback.
Very cool. Always glad to see more Batman in the store. We've got more of it coming up later, but in the meantime, we have some new Marvel books from their very exciting new line, Marvel Legacy, which obviously started last week with Legacy #1, that really cool one-shot that sort of laid out where Marvel is going with their stories. We still have some of those in stock if you're interested in checking out and sort of getting on board with what Marvel's doing these days.
I think that's a key book to understanding, where they're going. And Marvel Legacy has had some both positive and negative press recently. We believe it's a good direction for Marvel to go in. We feel like it's sort of bringing back a lot of the favorite characters that we want to see playing out their roles in Marvel. And so, it's exciting to see this. It's exciting to see the high issue numbers coming back to all these titles. And so here's 3 legacy titles coming up that came in this week.
With very high issue numbers, which is really cool. We start off first with Venom #155, Lethal Protector Part 1. The Venom symbiote is back with Eddie Brock and on the streets of New York.
Yeah, exactly. And as always in these Venom stories, Venom is kind of an anti-hero. He's sort of the Darth Vader of Marvel comics when it comes to this, the Marvel universe. He's sort of dangerous and psychotic, but tends to try to work on the side of good. And in this case, Kraven the Hunter is sort of cutting loose on a lot of the supers in New York, and Venom is going to be one of those characters who is going to try and put a stop to Kraven the Hunter.
Yeah, very cool to see, just back up to 155. That's so awesome. But we have another book that's even higher in the issue count, and that is Avengers #672. This first issue of the Avengers Legacy series, Worlds Collide, both literally and figuratively, in this really cool arc that Mark Waid is writing. We have the Avengers teaming up with the younger generation, the Champions, to fend off and protect the Earth from a giant meteor collision. And sometimes they butt heads, sometimes they work really well together, but it was a very enjoyable issue. This has been a really strong series, in my opinion. It's got new art. Jesus Says, I believe, is the new artist name, and he brings a really cool style to this book.
And of course, Avengers is now being written by Mark Waid. Somebody with, we have a lot of respect for his writing. He's done some amazing runs on both Marvel comics as well as other publishers' comics. And he's just extremely well known, and he's an extremely reliable writer for writing, some killer stories and bringing new light to characters.
Very much so. Yeah, he's got a couple books coming out that I'm very excited about. But moving on now to Iron Fist, #73. Great cover with Sabretooth Round 2, Part 1. These are all new arcs, which is, means it's a great time to jump into a really fun book.
New arcs with a very familiar feel, in that it's a return of a lot of the characters that have been sort of missing from the Marvel Universe recently. And so it is a perfect time to pick up a title like Iron Fist and get into it.
So in this issue, Iron Fist is back in New York. Danny Rand staying at the Rand Corporation building. He's sort of back in his high-rises. He feels like his chi is back. He can summon that Iron Fist again. But somebody breaks into his building, and he needs an expert tracker to find who did it. And who better than Sabretooth?
Sabretooth, an awesome tracker, second maybe only to Wolverine as far as tracking people down. However, Sabretooth, an interesting callback here, and the reason this is Sabretooth round 2 is because Sabretooth was first introduced in Iron Fist issue 14.
That's right.
So he came from Iron Fist, even though he's kind of known for being in the X-Men stories. His origin is in the Iron Fist title, all the way back to issue 14, and now here we are, and Danny Rand needing Sabretooth to help him do this. And of course, they battled back in issue 14, and they battled in issue 73.
They do, yes.
So it's a kind of a contentious relationship they have, but hopefully it works out for the best.
Yeah, inevitably, Sabretooth reluctantly joins up with Iron Fist on his quest, but not without a little bit of destruction and bloodshed first. Super fun issue, been a really strong series in my opinion. So very excited for that. Venom, we should note, does have some lenticular covers, which are super cool.
They are sweet.
Shows Spider-Man and Spider-Man sort of being taken over by the Venom symbiote, and those are available for purchase with the purchase of a regular cover, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, so those legacy titles and covers are super cool, and we're really excited to start seeing them in the store now. But moving on, we have some more new Marvel, sort of outside the legacy line. Punisher the Platoon is a sort of self-contained story of Frank Castle and the Punisher, written by Garth Ennis, of course, of Preacher fame. He's written a ton of Punisher as well. This is a character that's really near and dear to his heart. And this is sort of, would you say, the origins of the Punisher?
Yeah, it goes all the way back to sort of his tour in Vietnam, and sort of maybe how he formed the man that he is now in the Marvel Universe. This is a 6-issue limited series. This is issue number 1. It's a really cool title to jump into at this point. You can easily have the entire collection. Garth Ennis is amazing. I don't think he can write a book that you'll end up reading without feeling like you just kind of experienced something that was beyond the sort of the comic paper that you're holding. The Preacher, and if you've watched the television series at this point, you know that his writing and his sort of take on things is amazing, and that carries over into Punisher the Platoon.
Yeah, and speaking of television series, we're getting Punisher on Netflix pretty soon, so this will get you up to speed, or ahead of the curve anyways, in terms of the story of Frank Castle. So very excited for that. It was on my pull list. It was a really great read, and glad to see Garth Ennis on the Punisher. In the meantime, we have Charles Soule's Astonishing X-Men number 4. This sort of ragtag team of X-Men continue their quest in the Shadow Realm. You've got Mystique there on the cover, and Logan, though, on the other hand, is sort of battling some inner turmoil, as he is wont to do.
Well, I think he's been affected by one of the Shadow World characters,
Right.
and so they've kind of poisoned his mind. He's potentially going to go on a homicidal rampage in London, and some of the X-Men, including Psylocke and some others, are going to end up trying to hunt him down and kind of detain him and keep him from killing people in London, which would probably be a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, some really cool sort of self-contained books coming out of Marvel this week that I'm very excited about. We also have some new Marvel trades. These are not necessarily new releases,
right?
But they are new to the Freakopolis Geekery, and we love getting some of those back stories in. Up first is the first X-Men.
Yeah, and the first X-Men, it tells the story of, interestingly enough, and we just talked about Wolverine and we talked about Sabretooth today, they are sort of the leaders of a group of the original group of X-Men, even prior to Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, and sort of part of the formation of that. And so it tells the story of them kind of getting this group of mutants together, trying to keep them both safe from sort of hostile humans as well as other hostile mutants, as well as kind of take their place in the world.
Very cool. Yeah, so that just arrived this week along with Infinity Incoming. I love this cover. It's got Thanos plus a ton of Marvel's greatest characters, and of course you can't mention Infinity without the Infinity Gems, the Infinity Gauntlet, and this tells the story leading up to some of those events.
Yeah, it's a story kind of preceding all of that. It gives you a sense of who all those characters are, and when we say those characters, we mean Thanos and sort of what his adolescence and growing up was as a guy from Titan.
That's right.
As well as the Inhumans and their structure and where they came from, and the issues around the Terrigen mists, which we've seen a lot of in recent Marvel writings, as well as Avengers and a cosmic version of the Avengers, a group of Avengers suited to fighting galactic enemies and threats. And all of those things come together toward this Infinity Incoming, and the Infinity Gauntlet, the Infinity Gems, the Infinity War, all of that stuff. This is sort of the lead in to all of that.
Very cool. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about that cover. I love seeing Thanos sort of in the background there. You've got in the foreground, of course, Captain Marvel. You've got Stephen Strange, Medusa, Thor, Nebula. So seeing them all in that book, I'm sure, makes for a very exciting read.
Yep, it's going to be great. And it's a collected edition. It's funny because it collects stuff like from the 80s, from the 2000s. It just has a number of things that you would need to know if you want to understand where this whole Infinity Gauntlet thing came from.
Very cool. We also have another sort of unique Marvel book coming in this week, and that is the Marvel Tech Manual, the owner's workshop manual for Marvel vehicles.
This is a newly published book this week, and it's a really, really cool. I love these books. I love the style of sort of creating technical manuals for fictional vehicles and fictional devices. The first time I saw this was way back in Marvel Universe, and now to see these sort of created in a large format, soft cover, really nice sort of. It feels like a workshop manual. It works out ideally. You're going to see a lot of technical drawings, a lot of call-outs, a lot of indications of how these devices actually work, how these vehicles work, and that includes, as we see on the cover, Ghost Rider's motorcycle, but also the Goblin glider, the Avengers Quinjets, the Shield helicarrier, the X-Men's Blackbird. All of those things are covered really well and have really, really cool technical drawings with cutaways so that you can see the inside gadgetry and all of that. Just a great book.
Yeah, definitely a really cool book for those geeky gearheads out there. We know there's some of you, but yeah, I flipped through this and was super impressed. It has just so much interesting information on any Marvel vehicle you can think of, really. So very cool. We also have moving into some of the more indie third-party publishers now. We have new Image comics this week. A couple of them. There's some more on another side. This week includes, these are all Skybound books, so right on for Robert Kirkman and his print, putting out some really great books this week, including Extremity number 7, which is the start of a new arc for Extremity. We see Thea and Rollo, our two main characters, heading down into the dark below, beneath the Great Plains, and finding some really crazy surprises down there, as well as being pursued by some of Extremity's greatest enemies. We also see Extremity number 7 comes with a really cool Walking Dead variant cover.
Yeah, that's a tribute variant, which is really neat, and it's kind of cool that it's sort of this is why we put this sort of Skybound image together. The Walking Dead is new this week, as well as this variant that is sort of a callback to a recent cover of Walking Dead. Very, very cool.
Yeah, I know we've talked about Extremity a lot and given it a lot of praises, but I really love this book. It's got Daniel Warren Johnson, Mike Spicer on it, two of the coolest, most creative minds in comics today working on this book. We also have The Walking Dead number 172, starting this Hilltop Reborn arc. We see Carl there on the cover, repairing a roof in the Hilltop colony. So for any of you that have seen the show or are reading the comics, you're obviously familiar with the Hilltop colony and its importance in The Walking Dead. Well, it was recently destroyed in The Walking Dead comics, but now they're sort of getting their feet back on the ground and getting things back together, which is super great to see, you know?
Right, and Robert Kirkman still is the writer of the Walking Dead comic. He's obviously the writer of the Walking Dead AMC television series. The television series follows quite closely with the comic. In fact, it's almost as though the comic and the trade paperbacks that we have here in the shop are storyboards for the Walking Dead series. He sticks very, very closely to that for both things.
Very much so. Of course, they're quite a ways ahead in the comics at this point. I think they're probably like 70 to 50 issues or so ahead. So it'll be really interesting. You know, if you don't want any spoilers, this might not be the book for you. But if you're up to speed, it's a good read for sure.
Yeah, and if you want to have a sense of
where it's
things are going, this is definitely a good thing to be checking out.
Absolutely. We have some more indie titles on the way, as well. A couple image books, a couple by even smaller publishers like Dynamite and Titan. Up first here is Regression, issue 5, another Cullen Bunn book, super creepy crawly. It's got some great covers, with the trade paperback coming out next month, I believe. This is the last issue of this first arc for Regression. Speaking of creepy crawlies, we have Centipede number 3, of course, harkening back to the days of Atari. This book is based off just that, the Atari Centipede game. And in this case, a giant centipede has come down to a certain planet and destroyed it. And there's one man left living, and sort of recounting the tale of him versus the giant centipede.
And this is written by Max Bemis.
That's right.
And it's written with an interesting sort of twist on it, in that it as I understand it, it involves the reader.
That's right. Yeah, I mean the main character is sort of doing a radio show, as post-apocalyptic survivors are akin to do, and in that radio show is speaking directly to you as the reader of Centipede, and I think that's a really interesting narrative spin on a book. So yeah, when I saw that, I realized this was pretty cool. He's doing something a little different, and Max Bemis, of course, a childhood icon of mine. He was in a band that was super popular. Now writing comics, which is super cool. He joins like Gerard Way in that sort of fashion, and he'll be writing Moon Knight number 189 and Moon Knight going forward for Marvel Legacy, which I'm very excited for.
That's exciting, and I think it's going to be really cool to check it out. He will undoubtedly have a new kind of spin, a new take on Moon Knight. It'll be an introduction of a sort of new look and feel for how Moon Knight is working within the world.
That's right. And in the meantime, we have Robotech number 3, written by Brian Wood, published by Titan Comics. These are both two very important figures in the Freakopolis Geekery. We've talked about them a lot, quite a bit. But this is an interesting book because it is everything from that hit 80s anime in a comic form.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Robotech is just, it's a super cool story. It's a really well-loved anime story. It takes place in Macross City, and they've kind of kept that all in place. I mean, so much of this is kept in place. These characters are instantly recognizable. If you watched the television series, or if you watch it now on Netflix, where it is available, you'll know who all of these characters are in the comic. And I noticed that in this issue, Brian Wood picked up a sort of partner writer in one of the writers from Transformers. So it's really going to be interesting to see how a Transformers writer comes into play, because, of course, the Robotech devices themselves have a very Transformer feel. Things convert from being sort of jet fighters into robots with arms and legs. So, it really is a Transformer kind of story. And so to get a writer from Transformers will be interesting to see what they bring to the table and how they change what Brian Wood has been doing so far.
Absolutely. We also have Elsewhere, number 3, a really cool image book that takes a look at where Amelia Earhart might have landed when she went missing all those years ago in the Bermuda Triangle. In this case, she landed in a pretty weird alien planet.
Yeah, and this is just, it is just a fun, sort of high action adventure kind of feel. Amelia Earhart is just a very, very cool character. It's really cool for her to be, such a fun, adventuring kind of Indiana Jones sort of female lead to this character, to this book. We really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's been super fun. We have issues 1, 2, and 3 in stock. It wasn't a book that was on my pull list, but it is now, so it definitely impressed me, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. You see some more aviators and some nods to things that might have disappeared on Earth and landed here.
Yeah, it gets really, they just have a lot of fun with it. It gets a little bit weird. I know in this particular issue, they're trying to escape some sort of man-eating flying insects. The insects are about as big as your thumb, I would imagine. They literally are killing members of their party. Members of their group are falling and dying to these things. So they're running through the jungle looking for a place to escape. And lo and behold, they encounter what looks like a World War II submarine laying on the floor of the jungle, which makes for an ideal metal canister for them to get inside of and hide out. But I guess you'll have to check out the book to see how things play out from there.
Definitely. So that does it for comics, I believe. Sort of floppy single issues new this week, but there are some more really cool books in store. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, this is all the stuff that is on the shelf at the Freakopolis Geekery this weekend, and probably in your local comic book shop as well. If there's any viewers out there with a cool local comic shop. If you guys have any questions, let us know in the comments on the live video. I'm keeping an eye on them. But let's get back into it with some new coloring books this week. We love to stock some really cool adult coloring books, and I think these are all great additions, including a new one, the Princess Bride Memorable Quotes coloring book. This is just like, one of those books you crack open and you can't help but smile if you're familiar with the movie or the book itself.
Yeah, you don't quite know what you're going to find, but then you immediately encounter, scenes and quotes that you well know.
Right, like, per se, anybody want a peanut?
Yeah.
And others.
Yes.
It's such a quotable movie that this is just the perfect opportunity to, get a reminder of how many awesome lines there are.
I saw My Way is Not Very Sportsmanlike just go by.
That's a good one too, yeah.
Which is ideal.
So yeah, as you know, tons of great scenes from The Princess Bride in there, along with their quotes. But we also have some more coloring books, including Color Your Own Thor. These Color Your Own Marvel coloring books are really cool because they look at panels and covers, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they take good advantage of the amazing art that's been made for Thor over the years. In this case, they take some awesome covers, some incredible panels, splash pages, that sort of thing, and allow you to color them. And that includes lots of shots of the Thunder God in action, as well as other Asgardians like Hela, Odin, Loki, everybody that you can kind of imagine, in dramatic, awesome poses with incredible backgrounds, ideal for you to put your colors to.
Very cool, yeah. So a whole book of Asgardian Vikings for you to cover. We also have our final new coloring book this week, Jim Henson's Labyrinth adult coloring book, obviously featuring some of the characters there on the cover. And I feel like this is a film that's in a really unique place in sort of pop culture. Of course, having had one movie that was super cool and sort of a cult hit, I guess, with starring David Bowie and this really cool fantasy Jim Henson puppeteer way.
Yeah, the incredible puppets.
Yeah.
Just so lifelike and believable. All of the sort of practical effects that took place back then. I mean, people love Labyrinth. And everything about it. And it is kind of unique in that. I mean, I suppose maybe Dark Crystal is another one.
Right. I guess it's Henson things.
Yeah, those Henson movies, they just capture people's hearts and imagination, and they carry on. And that's the case with this adult coloring book. It's an amazing book. It reflects those amazing characters really well, and gives you the opportunity to sort of take part in bringing life to them once again.
Yeah, very cool. Some of my favorite movies up there in the coloring book sphere this week. It's very cool. What else do we have this week? New.
We wanted to talk about
yeah.
the trades. Now, these are not necessarily brand new this week. In fact, they're not, but they're awesome, and they are our comic club selection, so they make a lot of sense for us to talk about here.
That's right. So up next for the comic book club for our October 11th meeting is Batman: The Long Halloween. Of course, a classic Batman story that spans a year in Batman's shoes, and the continual fights he seems to be getting in, sort of revolving around holidays throughout the year.
This is a really nice, big, thick trade paperback.
Yeah.
It covers 13 issues of Batman, covering the Long Halloween. The Long Halloween is a story of Batman hunting down a serial killer who only does his killings on holidays. It's a pretty incredible, remarkable, highly respected story, and definitely something you can get in this one sort of compendium and get the entire story. Really, really cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. I'm excited for you guys to read this for the comic book club. I wish I was going to be there, but yes. So you might see the theme here a little bit for October's comic book club picks. They're both sort of Halloween-y. That's what the goal was, including, of course, the Long Halloween. That's a natural fit. But our next book for our October 25th meeting, Hellboy in Hell, Volume 1, The Descent, we'll be reading that for later this month. I'm a huge fan of Hellboy, so very excited to dig into this.
Yeah, Mike Mignola's Hellboy, you can't go wrong with that. The stories are always awesome. The art is always incredible. And it has its own style. You know Hellboy when you see it. There's no question about it, and it's just super cool. In this case, Hellboy in Hell is because Hellboy has essentially been killed and sent to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see sort of him kind of dealing with being in hell and the fact that there is sort of a throne there with his name on it.
Right. Yes, as he, it was intended to be his home originally, but he found a new home in Earth. So yeah, super excited to read these books with you guys in the comic book club. We have more copies in stock. If you haven't been to the comic book club yet, you can see the events on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Freakopolis/events and see that it's just a really cool group of people that get together. The first half we talk sort of what everybody's been reading outside of our picks, and then the second half we get into really diving deep into our comic book club picks, which this month is these two books. Going as far to say, I didn't like this narrative structure, I didn't like these panelings or this letter, or I really enjoyed the colorist and this new character that was introduced, or the angle that this writer took on this thing. So I love that group so much, and highly encouraged. These are some of our best picks I think we've had, so very excited about those. And that does it for this just in, but we wanted to give you guys a reminder about Game Show Night.
Don't miss Game Show Night.
Yeah, on Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. here on Facebook. We had about, a dozen people or so in the chat room on our first Game Show Night, which was Marvel Trivia, answering questions, and really having a ton of fun.
Right. The way we're handling Game Show Night at this point, we're still kind of feeling out the overall format. This week we're going to do Marvel Trivia again. We broadcast live just like we are here now. You kind of join in with us and open your chat window up. We hit you with Marvel trivia questions this week, and you try to be the first one to answer with the correct answer into the chat window, and you score points. Over time, we'll be sort of refining the overall practice of Game Show Night, how we're handling it, and trying to get more and more viewers involved in it. And there will be prizes and sort of some ongoing point tallying and all of that, perhaps a grand championship sort of thing. We're working it all out, but we want to get started now. We want you to have some fun. We want you to join us Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. Know your Marvel stuff. Come ready to with the old thinking caps on. Do your research. Be ready to Google quickly on those ones where no one has the answer handy.
Right.
And see if you can't take the lead. I can tell you we will definitely be doing something where the more players that we have, the more viewers that are logged into the live stream, the more the prizes will be worth and the more value it'll have. So if you can help bring some viewers and some participants to the game, we would encourage you to do that.
Yeah, you're in the running for a bigger prize then.
Yep,
so.
it'll up the prizes, and some of you guys, you know who you are gonna, particularly when we have Marvel nights, you're gonna do pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So yeah, that's up next for Facebook Live at 6:30 here on Facebook this Saturday. Don't want to miss it. Thank you guys so much for joining us for our 8th episode of This Just In. That does it for all the cool new stuff on the shelf this week. But as always, there will be more cool new stuff next week. So keep an eye on the Facebook. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Any of those things help to let your friends know you're in the know on what's going on in pop culture this week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. See you Saturday.